Okay, we're live. Ashima Harkafone, welcome to this week's Ollaa Development Education Live. My name is Sartu. I'm joined by Bagada, which is Ellal, and Burtukaan, who are students in our current Afan Oromo Level 1 class. So just before we get started, if you guys could introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do. We can start with Burtukaan.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Burtukaan Adera. I am a product manager in tech. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, and Ellal, tell us a little bit about
Hello, my name is Ellal. My profession is teaching, and I'm a teacher at an elementary school.
Nice. Thank you for joining me today for this discussion. So the first question, we're just going to talk about your experience with Afan Oromo. If you could tell us when you started learning Afan Oromo and kind of how did you get started? This one we can start with Ellal.
All right, my experience about Afan Oromo is growing up as I was younger. It was spoken a little bit in the house, but I didn't really pursue it. And then I saw the Ollaa Oromo class just a couple months ago, and I always was interested in learning Afan Oromo. I did a lot of independent work myself, just reading online and buying books and reading, but not really through a classroom atmosphere. So I was really happy to see the Ollaa Oromo program once it came up.
And I guess what motivated you to take the class? Were you always
What motivated me was I really wanted to learn how to speak Afan Oromo, but there was really no programming out there to learn how to speak. And it was really hard to communicate with other Oromo people because I couldn't really speak the language. So that's what really motivated me to want to learn to speak Afan Oromo. Just really the willingness to be part of the culture and know my culture better through language.
Mm-hmm. And Burtukaan, if you'd like to tell us your experience learning Afan Oromo and kind of how you got started.
So for me, it was actually my native language. I learned it. It was the first language that I learned. I was spoken widely at home. So for a little bit of context, I was born back home. I was born in Burayu. And it was mostly like my grandmother, great grandmother, and dad that taught me Afan Oromo because it was just always there, and that was just a language that I learned. And I still have a lot of memories of like me and my grandmother speaking. We used to do like Ipo, which is kind of like I think riddles in English. And lots of fun memories like that. And then I moved to the US when I was about 11 years old. And with that came assimilation and wanting to fit in. So I kind of slowly started losing my speaking abilities, but I could still, like, I could understand, I can kind of comprehend what people were saying, but I couldn't speak, which was a kind of like a bit of a frustrating experience because it felt like everything was at the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't say it. And then after about like 8 or 9 years, I went back home, and I couldn't communicate with my family members, like with my cousins. I couldn't talk to them, uncles and aunts. So that was kind of the motivation. After that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna teach myself, or I'm gonna learn. And then I tried doing that, but that was right before college, and I kind of underestimated how much time college was gonna take, how much time classes were. So that I did learn a little bit, but not too much. Like there weren't that many resources, and I don't think the Ollaa class was a thing yet back then. So that was a bit difficult. But then I went back again this past summer slash fall, and I still couldn't communicate. So I was like, it's finally time to learn and get out of that. I used to be like part of that Afan Oromo Kombeka crew. So I was like, it's time to move out of that group. so I looked for resources and I looked for this class. So now I'm kind of, I would say, like relearning speaking. But it's also a great opportunity for me to learn how to read and write as well, since I never learned that before. Um, so yes, does that
Wow,
answer your question?
great. That's great. So I guess kind of following up on that, I guess what contribution did, your family have? Did they teach you? I mean, you grew up back home, so that obviously was probably a big contribution to learning, the culture and the norms, and kind of just talk about your familiar or like the contribution of your family, if you could.
Yeah. Um, so that's for me, right? First.
Yeah, that's for you.
um, yeah, my family played a big part into kind of instilling Oromo traditions and Oromo culture into me. So they did play a big part, and they still do. Like whenever I want to practice, I call my family members back home and just talk to them the best that I can with like what I know. Um, so they play a big part. Growing up, especially if you like grow up in an Oromo community, you don't understand the things that you're kind of getting are Oromo because that's all you know. But for me, like things like respecting the elders and understanding the importance of collectively uh, caring about every single person collectively versus yourself only. Um, those kinds of things that what I didn't necessarily think were part of the culture were part of the culture that kind of gave me the foundation to who I am. So yeah, I would say my family played a big part in understanding Oromo culture and Oromo language early on,
Mm-hmm.
and they still do.
Yeah. Um, that's great. I think, especially growing up back home, that probably gave you, a little bit of an advantage to being able to learn about, the cultures and the norms. I guess, what do you have a favorite memory that you can share with us from back home when you're growing up?
Mm. A favorite memory. I think this is true across most Oromo families is that we really enjoy music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and anytime there's music or dancing, I think that would be my favorite memory. There's I think that's a big way of keeping the culture alive.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a favorite memory from this past summer when I visited my family, which was celebrating Ericha in Finfinne.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great experience, just being surrounded by a lot of Oromos and understanding how during like in that moment how everybody felt like a family. It was a huge group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like whenever you're taking pictures in your traditional clothes, someone will come in and take a picture with you just without
Mm-hmm.
asking because they're like that familiar. um, I think that was probably one of my favorite memories just from Oromia in general, from being in Oromia.
Thank you for that. And then, Ellal, if you would like to tell us a little bit about um, your like the contribution of your family to you learning Afan Oromo. Were they a big help? What was it like learning Afan Oromo, maybe growing up and at home? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Uh, about growing up at Romo, I had little exposure. My dad really pushed me to learn Romo, but I was just one of those kids who didn't want to listen and learn. And I said, I'll learn another time. And I kind of pushed it away. And as I grew older, I just kind of searched by myself and tried to learn Romo because I had the idea like I don't live there, so what's the point of even learning?
Mm,
So, I mean, my dad really pushed me, and I learned a great deal about Oromo language and culture through him, and I'm still learning more every day. So, I would really attribute my parents for trying to
mhm.
teach me about Oromo.
So when did you kind of make that decision to learn?
When I made the decision to learn was around 2019, 2020. was when I really started like reading and trying to learn. And through my visits to Oromia, I really learned a great deal. So I was fortunate to visit twice, 2020 and 21. So just going there, talking with the local people and learning through people I met along the way, it really helped uh, define to improve my language skills in Afan Oromo with the places I visited in, whether it be Diradawa or Hara or Nazareth, sorry, Adema,
Mm-hmm.
and Legatafo, Legadati area. So those experiences really helped me learn Afan Oromo.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
My next question is, why is it important for diaspora, non-diasporas, non-Oromos even, to learn Afan Oromo? We can start with Burtukaan.
I think Oromo language is very, very important in connecting people of a shared identity, a shared culture. And if you want to communicate with someone of a certain culture, the least you can do is understand the language out of respect for the culture and the people. Um, and for me personally, I want to keep the memories of my grandmother, my great grandmother, just my family alive. So that's why it's very important to me. Um, and I know there are a lot of diasporas who want to go back home and contribute, and to do that without understanding Afan Oromo is going to be very difficult. So I think that is one of the most important reasons. Um, and I think we've seen Oromo culture kind of grow and expand over the last few years. And that couldn't be done without like having a strong foundation for culture, which is language. And if we want to expand the culture in many ways, not just art, we have to understand the importance of just speaking and communicating, um, and teaching other people once you have certain level of proficiency. Um, so yeah, that is why I think it's important.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And now, Ellal, why do you think it's important for us to learn Afan Oromo?
It's really important for the diaspora to learn Afan Oromo to keep the sense of culture and really keep the sense of Oromo identity, their Oromuma, who they are, Oromo, because that way it can pass down from generations and generations and never be forgotten, their history, their culture, their language, because if you don't know your culture, if you don't know your history, who are we really as a people? So there was a saying when I was in Diradawa, it was the Bajaj are common in Diradawa. So I got into Bajaj, and the Bajaj driver was telling me, Nama Adasan Beka, Akam Namara, how can they be a person if we don't know our sense of culture? So that was really powerful what he said, and it really stuck with me because we have to know our identity, who we are as Oromos. We have to keep the Oromuma. So that's very important to get done through culture, language, and speaking. So that's really important.
100%. And so I know, Burtukaan, you kind of touched on it briefly, but how important is it for us to consume, Oromo media, listen to Oromo music, read books? What contribution is that in and of itself? We can start with, Burtukaan, go ahead.
I think it is very important, especially if you are part of the diaspora community. If you're very far removed from your land or your people, you have to take advantage of any resources that you can get to keep as connected to your culture as possible. And reading and listening to media is one way to do that. Um, so I think it is very important, and doing that as much as possible is necessary. Like just even in our class, um, just hearing Barsisa talk in Afan Oromo is very helpful. Like when he teaches, he started off kind of easy in English, and then he kind of ramped up to teaching in Afan Oromo, which was very helpful to me. Just having that 2 days of an hour and a half or 2 hours of consuming everything in Afan Oromo was very helpful in making things just stick in your head. Um, so it is very important. And same thing with media too. I think that is a very easy way to kind of learn as much as you can, especially music. Like if you listen to the music lyrics very closely. Um, so it is very important, and in a place where you're kind of far away from the origins of your people and your land.
Yeah, definitely. And Ellal, over to you. How important is it to consume Oromo media, read Oromo books, listen to Oromo music? You know, what contribution does that have to furthering the language, I guess?
I mean, it's really important through music. Everyone listens to music, I'm pretty sure, and also through print media, through books, and such a Romo artist like Hachalu Hundesa, who's really talking about the Romo experience, talking about the situations back home, what's happening with the Romos in a direct way. It's really teaching people not only the Romo language, but what's happening in the ground in Oromia, his experience, what he sees, his stories, why Kenya, our struggle. So it's really important, the music, because the music always shows a message of what's going on in the times. So Oromo music does a really phenomenal job of explaining what's happening, from the legends like Ali Birra, Ali Shabbo, and even to present day, Hachalu, Galana Goromsa, and other Oromo artists, Abdi Noresa. They're always talking about an experience of what's happening. So it's really important to really listen to Oromo music and read Oromo articles and Oromo journals like Oromo Studies Association. It's really important.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. And I feel like there's a lot more media, um, for our consumption. So we should really be taking advantage of that. Now we're going to go over to our class. As we know, you guys are both taking our Afan Oromo Level 1 class. And so let's start with Ellal. Kind of, what have you learned so far? How has your experience been in the class? And maybe if you could tell us your favorite part about it, we'd love to know.
All right, so the class really is amazing. And once again, I found out through the class through a random Google search. So I had a whole bunch of old Oromo dictionaries in my house, and I went through that, and I did some self study on YouTube. And the class really went beyond my expectations. There's homeworks, there's quizzes, there's even a final exam. Bersisa Samuel really does an amazing job with his experience teaching back home in Oromia. He really offers a lot to the class, a lot to Ollaa, and he does a lot of great programming with the Oromo language, and he also does Oromo culture. We learn grammar, the alphabet. We learned Oromo historical facts. So the class, I really love it, and I'm really glad I took the time to fund the class, and I'm really glad to be a part of it, because you really learn a lot through the class, and it really helps you to learn to speak Afan Oromo. He goes through sentence structure, literally everything you need to be proficient in Afan Oromo. So I really love the class, and I really recommend anybody, if you're interested to learn Afan Oromo class, definitely take the class. It's really worth it.
Mm-hmm. I think it really helps to be like in a group environment, learning together. Now, Burtukaan, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about your experience taking the class and what you've learned so far and maybe your favorite part about it.
Yeah. I also think it's a great class. It kind of exceeded my expectations. Um, and yeah, similar to what Ellal said, we learned about from the very basics. So we start with Kube, and learn about everything else about the language, like language structure, grammar, pronunciation. So everything is covered, but there's also more covered too. Like within the homeworks, there are cultural kind of Easter eggs. I don't know if that would be the right term, but they're cultural things that we learn. Um, and in class too, like we learned about the Oromo calendar. We had conversations about like the Gada system, and that one caught me by surprise. And I really enjoy that we also incorporate that into the classroom as well. And we also incorporate art as well. So we listen to music at the beginning and end of the class most of the time. And that is also my other favorite thing about the class is that we incorporate art into it so that it's as like entertaining, interactive, and kind of immersive as possible. And we have like amazing uh, teacher. Our Barsisa is amazing. He makes learning very easy, and we have great TAs too. And it's a great experience overall. So and like you just said, sorry too, I think the community experience is also very important. Learning, trying to teach yourself and learning by yourself can be, um, it takes a lot of intrinsic motivation. And now that there is this resource, you don't need that. You can just learn with groups of people and hold yourself accountable more easily by showing up every day. And I think, yeah, the community aspect is also my other favorite thing as well.
Yeah, I think honestly it's a great group and everybody kind of motivates one another to learn and ask questions, and yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
So I know Ellal said he would, but would you recommend this class to other people, in the diaspora and even like non-Oromos?
Yes, I would really recommend the class to other Oromos and also anybody who's interested about Oromo culture. Even our class right now, we
Mhm.
have an American guy from Somaliland taking this class, which is really amazing, and he really offers a lot of insight about Oromos in Somaliland and his experience of dealing with and being immersed in the Oromo culture. So I really recommend it to anybody, anyone who's interested in taking a foreign language or who's interested about Oromo history. Definitely the class is worth it. And really, the class is very structured. There's a lot of support systems. There's TAs you can ask questions to, like Sartu's our TA and Gudisa, and they do an amazing job of answering any questions you have literally at any time. I send so many questions when I get confused, and they really do an amazing job of getting back to me. I always reach out to them anytime I'm confused, and they really do a good job of explaining material. Bersisa Samuel too, he does an amazing job. He's able to teach the class, and once again, he has a lot of experience teaching of Oromo, and he even helps you with any homework or anything you feel puzzled with. And one thing he always says that really motivates me is don't be afraid to make a mistake. Because if we don't make a mistake, we can't learn. So you don't have to be afraid to pronounce the word or write something in Kube. Because once you make a mistake, you realize where you went wrong and you can correct it and fix it. Because that's the way we all learn. So definitely
Absolutely.
recommend it to other people. Definitely.
Absolutely. And Burtukaan, would you recommend it to diasporas, non-Oromos? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I definitely recommend this class. Like I said, it exceeded my expectations. Um, and it's just, Afano is a really pretty language just to speak and to listen to. So if you want to uh, understand or speak, this is a great learning experience, a great community to be a part of. Um, and especially like if you plan on visiting Oromia, this would be a great start to to learn Afan Oromo. It gives a very great foundation to continue on your learnings or to try to communicate with people. So I definitely recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And so my last kind of question is, how do you think we can pass on the knowledge of Afan Oromo and kind of Oromo culture onto future generations. Obviously, having a class is a good start, but are there other ways that you think we can do this? Maybe Ellal?
I think really through the home level, through programming, for example, like if you're an Oromo person, having knowledge of the language, just spreading it on generation to generation. So if you have kids or family, you kind of talk to them in Afan Oromo, so they have that sense of language and culture, and it will kind of spread through generation and generation. But definitely programming, having educational programs such as this Oromo class, and I know there's apps that teach you Afan Oromo, so definitely programming really helps, but mostly from the person to person level at home, that's really where learning starts in the home. Then you can go on from there.
Absolutely. And Burtukaan, what are other ways that you think that we can pass on the knowledge of Afan Oromo and Oromo culture and customs to future generations?
So to add on to what Ellal said, I think it's important to also have lots of media for kids. We were just talking about this in class actually today. But kids consume a lot of media, and since now technology is more accessible, they're consuming more and more. So it's important to have Afan Oromo cartoons or shows for little kids, so that they can easily learn Afan Oromo without it being difficult. And I think that kind of breaks down into two things. So you show your kids Afan Oromo cartoons. That's one way to pass it down. But there's also the kind of the behind the scenes where you make sure that Oromo artists are getting enough resources to make those shows. So there is enough funding. They have the right tools. So those are like two ways I think it's important to pass on Afan Oromo to little kids. But also, I would say for kind of diaspora parents, it's important for because I've heard of this sentiment a lot where maybe parents won't teach kids their native language because um, they want them to be kind of immersed in English or know English fluently. But I think it's very important for parents to teach kids and pass on the language to them because once they grow up, they would probably eventually want to connect with their family, with their cultural roots. So, kind of shifting some of the mindset people might have about the importance of language and how that's kind of the foundation of identity. So making sure that is communicated to kids and that parents also kind of understand that the importance of that as well. Yeah.
I definitely agree with all those points. I think they're super important for, like, as you said, the furtherment of media and, giving children, media to consume at an early age so that they're able to learn that. But that's kind of the end of our discussion today. I'd like to thank you both for joining me today. For education, we will be having a Gada class that's set to run this April. And we're planning to have a Afan Oromo kids class after that. So if you have any young children that, like we said, giving them the media, giving them the tools to learn Afan Oromo. So definitely keep an eye out on Ollaa's social media pages for when that registration is open. But other than that, thank you, Ellal. Thank you, Burtukaan, for joining me today.
Thank you.
That's the end
Thank
of
you, Sartu. Thank you.
and we'll see you in the next live discussion.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good